Reddit, what's something that stuck with you that the person who said it probably never realized would have an impact? If 2 or more people that you trust are telling you something, it's probably true. My mom. This has served me well in realizing I was making bad choices at different times in my life. I might not listen to one person, but I surely think about it more if several are trying to tell me the same thing. My older brother told me once, after our dog died, that no matter how sad death is, the world will keep spinning. Tomorrow will come, nothing and no one will stop it. It was meant to be a tough love moment, and definitely meant to have an impact. Years later, when I was in high school, he died in a car accident, and his words were the only thing I could find comfort in. He couldn't have known a simple teach my brother a lesson type talk about our deceased pet would be what would drive me through the darkest moments of my life. I have 2 sisters, one that I consider to be my human, my soul twin, the smartest woman I know, the other one, whom I love just as much. It's different. We just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and we are very different people, so we don't connect on a deeper level. This isn't a snag on her. I do love her. She just drives me bonkers a great deal of the time. When my divorce was finalized, I was crushed. Even with a year of separation that had been relatively calm, I still felt war-torn. During the separation, I had moved in with my more detached sister who had also gotten divorced the previous year. She wasn't someone I would confide in very often about my feelings on my marriage because she was still very raw from her own. On this day though, I couldn't hold it in and I couldn't hide it. When I got home from work, she sat with me in my room on my bed and just stayed quiet. Not like her, until I blurted out everything I was feeling through sobs that racked my entire body. I honestly don't even know how she could understand anything I was saying, but she just held my hand and continued to stay silent. When I was all done, I looked at her and I said, "What am I supposed to do now?" She squeezed my hand and said, "You can't finish your book if you keep rereading this chapter." It is to this day one of the most meaningful things anyone has ever said to me. In high school, I was pretty quiet, and of the few friends I had, they were great friends. Well, my senior year, I'm not in the same lunch period as any of my friends, so most of the time I'm sitting alone, slowly watching the empty chairs at my table be dragged away to another table that needed them. Well, one of my friends always studied during lunch on block day with a teacher. One of the only days that I had the same period as a friend. Sometimes he would skip his study session to sit by me, and near the end of the year, during one such instance, he said to me real seriously, "A lot of people at this school just don't see you, and I understand how you feel, but I want you to know that I see you." And that has stuck with me since, and I can't get out of my head how nice that was of him, but also how it put everything in perspective to me. This resonates with me. I had the same sort of thing happen in college. I was picking up my mail at the mailroom and just in my own little world thinking about things, and a popular girl that I wouldn't have thought even knew I existed told me, "They say you're quiet, but I bet you're really noisy inside." One of my favorites is, "An entire ocean of water cannot sink a ship unless it gets inside the ship. Never let the negativity surrounding you get into your head." 8th grade teacher. Character is how you act when no one is looking. Probably haven't gone a week without thinking about it or it affecting my decision making since. That was 15 years ago. I use this often, but I use the word integrity instead of character. I was a butthole teenager working at a movie theater. We hired this guy, let's call him Kevin, older guy in comparison to a lot of the people there. I was talking crap about this kid in the lobby for no particular reason, and Kevin doesn't say anything the whole time. I finally finish my bit of trash talk and Kevin says, "Do you feel better now?" My dad died on my first day of sophomore year. After that, my brand new science teacher became sort of my father figure. On my last day of HS and his retirement day, he pulled me aside and hugged me and just says he'd be so proud. 4 freaking words. The second greatest man I'll ever meet. You have to be a friend to have a friend. My mom told me this when I was a kid and it's really stuck with me. Someone has to be the first one to reach out. It makes you a little vulnerable, but it usually pays off. You only have to be brave for a second. The rest will take care of itself. A cop once told me, "Don't be a polite victim." In other words, If you think a situation is hinky, don't worry about insulting someone. Get out, get away, get loud. Do whatever you need to do to disrupt a potential assault. If you feel you're in danger, don't let social niceties prevent you from being safe. My dad told me if you don't ask for what you want, you'll never get it. And it's the simplest statement, but they're words I live by to this day. It applies to everything from relationships, jobs, business, just day-to-day life. It's mind-blowing. This is such a good one, especially with relationships. People can't read your mind. Ask for what you want, need. In a more fun example, my uncle ends up with free hotel upgrades, upgraded to first-class seats, comped stuff all the time. I ask him how he does it and he replies with, I just ask. The worst they could say is no. I am successful as in I have a job that sounds great and I make good money, but honestly I have been pretty miserable. I don't like my industry or the people, or the work. Every time I fly back home to visit, I am the successful guy visiting his old hometown, which is awkward in many ways. If you ever wanted to know who your real friends are, move far away, in my case to another country. It's really illuminating who keeps in touch, who makes a point to see you when you're in town, and who doesn't. Anyways, this guy that I barely knew always made a point to hang out and catch up when I was in town. He was genuinely interested in how I was and what was happening in my personal life. I barely knew the dude, but he always took interest in the important pieces. He wasn't doing so well himself. My hometown was having a bit of an economic downturn and he was laid off. He told me the story of how HR and security laid him off and wanted to walk him out, and he refused, said he wouldn't make a scene, but he wanted to say goodbye to his co-workers, hold his head high and leave with dignity. He was then unemployed for a long period, but he had a smile on his face and said, no worries dude, I'll keep trying. I'll find something. He was thankful for his friends, his family, his fiancée, all of his good fortune, in a position where most people would feel crap sorry for themselves. And while I'm sitting there having a beer with him, I realized that although I probably made literally 10x what he made before being laid off, and on paper I was probably really successful compared to him, I would have traded everything to be him at that moment. At that moment I was deeply envious of him and his life. Ever since then I've tried to make it part of my life philosophy that when I am stressed out, I think what would, name, do, and it inevitably leads me towards something that makes me happier. This hasn't kept me on the previous path of always pursuing career success, but it's made me happier and happier. Not only that, it's made me a nicer and more tolerant person. I still honestly barely know the guy, but I think about him as a role model at least once a week. After writing this up, I promise I'll tell him the next time I see him. Please do make an effort to tell him. This may help him just as much as it did help you. You can love someone but not like them at the same time. This describes me perfectly so much. I love my mother dearly with all of my heart, but I just can't stand her for the life of me even though she has good intentions. This is a very recent realization of mine and it has been stressing me out a lot. Thank you for describing my current thoughts perfectly. I was at a summer camp and we were doing different team building activities. Somehow I managed to take the lead for one and was directing the other campers of ideas we could use to defeat a certain challenge. Other campers were suggesting different ideas, some of which I thought were just stupid. One of the camp leaders pulled me aside and said, it looks like you're taking leadership on this task. Maybe you should try and listen to everyone. That statement has stuck with me to this day. I systematically suggested trying everyone's ideas that day and we combined them all into one that worked. Now whenever I'm in leadership positions I try to make sure to listen to everyone's ideas and make sure everyone is heard. If you're doing something to be nice, don't expect anything in return. My mom always told me that if I give anything to anyone, I should only give things I don't expect back. That phrase has saved me plenty of money I probably never would have seen again, and really could have used. Never call somebody out on their mistakes in front of a group of peers. That's some of the best leadership advice I've ever been given. People will have more respect for you if you reserve your constructive criticism to one-on-one conversation. Criticize in private but praise in public. Old First Sergeant casually tries to cheer me up with, "Al, they can only chew your butt for so long before they've got a mouthful of your dong. Thanks, top." Obligatory thanks for the gold. My very first. Kind stranger, we are all bottoms on this glorious day. God, that's amazing. I need to remember that one. An amateur practices until they get it right. A professional practices until they can't get it wrong. My 6th grade teacher said to me one day, nothing ever happens until it happens to you. That is my life motto. That's why I have a first aid kit in my house, and both vehicles. That's why I've taken my first aid course. That's why I've got a 72-hour emergency kit. I'm not obsessive, but I am prepared in case of an emergency, and after a 100-year flood swept through my town, it was all worth it. I was prepared because as much as I never thought anything could happen to me, it did. I have problems with social anxiety, and for a very long time it was really hard for me to do things like go shopping, talk to waiters, or even ask other people for help. While I was growing up, my dad never understood why I avoided those things and had so much trouble with them. One day he and I got a little drunk at his house while playing pool, and I was apparently far less tight-lipped than usual, and I told him everything about how it made me feel, what caused it, how I hated that it controlled so much of my life and stopped me from doing so much that I wanted to do. One day he offers to take me on the road with him as a passenger while he's doing his truck driving job. It's a 5-day trip from Ohio to Houston and back. As we're driving, he tells me, son, I'm not going to be around forever, but I'll help you how I can. The easiest place to start is to walk into every place like you own it. If you can fake it, you can make it. That's all I do. I never considered that my dad, who had been a practical mountain in my eyes, had even the slightest insecurities. When he told me that, I was awestruck. Since then I've been getting a little better over time, and when it's really bad I just remind myself what he said. Your dad sounds like a really great guy. Growing up, my friends and I had a game we used to play called Paranoia. Basically, you all get in a big circle and going clockwise you whisper a question to the person next to you, and their answer has to be the name of someone in the circle, and they have to answer it out loud so everyone can hear. It's then that you flip a coin, and if it lands on heads, you have to repeat the question out loud. But if it lands tails, no one will know what the original question was, thus creating a great sense of paranoia. I'd always felt extremely insecure about myself because all my friends were extremely intelligent, all honors and AP courses, award winners, scholarship offers, wealthy, loving families. You get it, they're brilliant minds and come from kind homes. Meanwhile I'm basic, boring, bland, and average in just about every way. Never had a good relationship with my family and never had a lot of money either. I never really felt like I fit in with that group at all. Anyway, so one night we're playing Paranoia. Some time passes and as usual my name isn't being said at all. Finally I hear Louis, someone I had hardly associated myself with, say my name. He said it confidently, proudly, and with the utmost sincerity. It was just a simple "Oh, I feel like Andy," for sure. So as you'd expect, my ears are perked up and I'm just praying that the coin lands on heads so I can hear what the question was. But that's when the paranoia set in. What if it's a bad question? What if I don't want to know what the question was? But it's too late. It's flipped, and after what felt like a lifetime in suspension it lands on heads and Louis repeats the question out loud. Who here do you think will be the happiest and most successful? It sounds stupid, but it was honestly something I really needed to hear at the time, as I was dealing with a lot of insecurities and just general emotional fatigue. Since then though, I've always used it as a motivator and told myself, do it for Louis and do it for yourself. To this day, any amount of success I've gotten I've credited to that moment because it really did help give me confidence. I've won a few awards for my writing and it's opened so many great doors for me and my future, and it's all thanks to Louis in that stupid game, and I don't think he or anyone there has any idea how much it meant to me. This sounds like a game that's more trouble than it's worth, and stressful. Glad it was a good question. Growing up I was pretty annoying and obnoxious and couldn't for the life of me figure out why it was hard to make friends, and I was constantly picked on. When I was a freshman in HS and on the swim team, I asked one of the seniors why everyone hated me. He responded with, "It's not that people hate you, it's just, you don't let crap go." And he was so freaking right. I didn't let crap go. I let every little thing bother me and I showed it. Of course people are gonna dig on you if they see they can get a rise out of you every time. So I started letting crap go, and wouldn't you know it, the harassment started to go away. In fact, before I knew it I was starting to make friends and become social. Edit. For those asking how you find the line between letting things go and getting walked over, the answer is you figure it out with time. In fact, I did swing a little bit to the other extreme and I did let people take advantage of my kindness. Once I picked up on that, I walked it back the other way and found a nice balance. Only you will be able to figure out what your boundaries are and when to enforce them. True. Don't take yourself too seriously and above all, enjoy the company of others. It's better to learn this in high school than later in adulthood. A guy on MDMA told me to never dance to impress, but to dance to express. Really stuck with me. I want MDMA fueled life classes to be a thing now. Once when I was a young boy, maybe 11 or so, I was naughty in school. That weekend I had to stay at my dad's and he was being an almighty prick. Hit me, shouted at me, called me names, etc. I had to go to work with him on the Saturday, and he had a French guy who was, now that I'm old enough to understand, a raging alcoholic. So here I am being ordered round at work, being shouted at and insulted to the point where I just wanted to cry. I was hiding basically round a corner and my dad found me and decided that I needed a bit more public humiliation. So he gave it to me. The Frenchman heard this and eventually waited for him to go off in a storm of thunder. He sidles up to me and says deadpan, "You know, in this life some people are just stupid. Don't mind them." And then he went off like nothing happened. To date, it's the best piece of advice I have ever received and one of the nicest things anyone has ever done for me. Don't point out something about someone's appearance unless they can fix whatever is wrong in the next 10 seconds. Double quote. For example, "You look sick, tired, sunburnt, or decay." That person can't do anything about that immediately, but your pocket is sticking out, you have ink on your lip, etc. are fine because that person can fix whatever it is that's wrong and they feel like you're trying to help them as opposed to just making a comment. I was very sad in high school. Home life sucked and everything, but I was insistent on being optimistic and bubbly and to make people laugh. It took a lot of energy, but I went in every day with that attitude. Most people didn't know I was sad because of this, and I think I made a lot of people have good days. But one day was extra tough for me, like crying between classes. But I was still jokey, like visibly it was taking my all to keep making jokes. My gifted facilitator pulled me into her office, hugged me and said, "You don't have to always make jokes. You don't owe anyone anything. It is okay to take a day off and be sad." And I still try to be jokey and optimistic, but I do take days off, and it helps a lot. My old boss grabbed me by my shoulders from behind while I was walking and he said to me, "No, relax like this. Shoulders back, walk like you own the place," and I have done it ever since. An ex told me you can love someone but not be right for them. That crap hit me hard and I still remember that moment perfectly to this day. I met the love of my life, she didn't. If you continue to throw dirt on people, you not only get your hands dirty but you lose a lot of ground. Oh, that's a great one. I've never heard that, but that is very, very multifaceted. I was once having a pointless bratty argument with my mother and said something dramatic along the lines of, "I don't care if you stop loving me," and with the most sincere tone, she looks me in the eyes and says, "Honey, I will never stop loving you." Instantly broke. Adults are just really big kids. I had what I can only manage to describe as a midlife crisis at about age 15. I was super depressed about the fact that I was growing up and becoming an adult and just having a hard time saying goodbye to being a kid. And some stranger said that while watching a show about some adults being dorks, and it just hit me. Adults are just big kids, and having fun and being wholesome and imaginative and silly are things you can do your entire life. I like to make people laugh. One time a friend's father told me, "You're not going to be a comedian, are you?" and it hit. One classmate also told me once, "You're not funny, you're just mean." I thank her for it because it was then that I realized I was a big jerk that thought he was a fun guy. I was having a discussion with my friend about first world guilt. Feeling guilty for being born in a wealthy country where we just toss away food while other people literally starve and die from diarrhea. Things like that. Well, he said, "Take yourself off that cross. Others could use the wood." Basically, don't just sit there feeling sorry for yourself. It doesn't really do anyone any good. Try to do something about it. When I was 14, I met an older girl who told me I was beautiful. I said I wasn't, and she replied, why do pretty girls always think they're ugly? I think we're both quite beautiful. It completely changed my view, because I had never met somebody who was unapologetically confident before. It just felt like I was expected to think I was ugly because everybody else felt that way. When my football coach told me, sit down man, I know you've already given me everything in the tank and then some. It stuck with me as one of the few times I felt like I was actually appreciated. A friend of mine in high school said something I will never forget. I was sitting in civics class fooling around sketching some stuff. I always have random ideas about crap and draw random crap. Never very good stuff in terms of art though. Anyway, I had an idea about a heart monitor people could wear while sleeping and it would go off if someone had a problem. She asked what I was doing and I explained it. She then said, you are going to change the world one day. I wish I had managed that, but I like to think I still have time to help change our world. She died in her sleep of a diagnosed brain aneurysm about 6 years after high school. Still makes me really sad thinking about it to this day. She was a really happy, friendly, amazing person. We weren't close after high school, but her death definitely affected me. Really sucked to see the world lose such an awesome person. My engineering teacher told me the day before I graduated high school, the hardest battles fought are the ones that are in your head. Go with confidence and follow the path that you feel is right, and you will always end up in the place you want to be. That stuck with me, because the man is like a father to me. Thank you for letting me sign your yearbook. Essen gave me a smile I still can't describe today, both sad and happy at the same time. She hadn't gotten a yearbook and was just sitting in her assigned seat while the rest of us were having fun. It really opened my young 14-year-old mind to how small actions can mean a lot. ETA. Wow. I did not expect this to get so much attention. ETA 2. Thank you so much for the gold kind person. I'm glad you liked my post. Bonus. We were in choir together sitting next to each other and on a few occasions I would start to nod off. She would always 1. Nudge me awake when the teacher looked. 2. Would flip my music sheets to the correct page. And 3. Would point to the part in the music if I was lost. She was super quiet, a couple of years older, and I don't think spoke English all too well. But man was she nice and she made an impact on my life. Bonus. After the above story, I tried to look for opportunities where I could help. While at my senior year book fair, I was looking at a couple of books to purchase when a girl walked up behind me. She was the library student assistant, a fellow senior, and had notable autism. She asked, aren't books great? I responded, yep. Don't know what I'd do without them. She then said, yeah, I just wish I could afford some of them. Cue me about to cry. I asked my mom if I could have $30 to spend on this classmate. She was surprised, proud, and said of course. I went to the librarians, asked them to have my classmate fill out a wish list of books, and told them I was going to buy them for her. They just about cried and got her to fill one out. I ended up buying 3 books for her and was there when the librarians gave her the little bundle. She was so confused and then 100% smiling at her new books that she immediately opened. To this day she doesn't know I bought those books for her and I am perfectly okay with that. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Sorry, I didn't mean to type this much. Hope you enjoyed. Normally Ascretic questions don't matter much to me, but this one does because a simple question flipped my life. Set the stage. I'm your average above average kid. I was smart, well educated and kind of a dong middle schooler. I was pretty much a stock character. I wanted to become a lawyer because I was good at arguing and writing. It makes me cringe just considering it. Then a girl who I was head over heads crushing on and had been for years asked me, why don't you just try being nice to people? She wasn't being mean. She was just genuinely curious. I realized I didn't have an answer. So I set about over the next 13 years trying to make myself the kind of fellow that girl who I so admired would have liked. I did disaster relief, worked for non-profits and am currently a housing case manager in a homeless shelter. Sometimes I just feel like I am going through the motions and that I have no idea what it means to be a good person, but dang if I don't try every day to be that who she would have liked instead of who I was. That girl is now older and many miles away, but I like to think that if I ever do happen to run into her again, unlikely as it may be, that she wouldn't be able to recognize me and see someone worth knowing instead. P.S. I'm not hating on lawyers. Everyone has a calling. I was just interested in becoming one for all the wrong reasons. Haha, I recently told my dad this story and he laughed hard, saying something like, I could have saved your mother and I a heck of a lot of trouble if I had just followed the rules. When I was a kid, I once told my dad that he couldn't U-turn because of the double yellow lines in the road. He did it anyway and he said something along the lines of, son, someday you'll learn they're just lines of paint. He was just talking about the road, but that quote shifted my perspective on a lot of things like ethics and grey areas. He showed me that good people can still question the rules, and breaking a law doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It opened a whole new way of thinking about authority and compliance. Obviously my 8-year-old brain wasn't figuring this stuff out in such eloquent internal monologue, but it was thinking critically. When I approach life with a healthy dose of skepticism, this quote often involuntarily comes to mind. It has such breadth and depth of meaning for me as I've applied it to so many situations, not just situations involving authority. He didn't remember saying it, but it really stuck with me. This one spoke to me. I tend to get really caught up in what the rules say. Your dad is accidentally very wise. I don't know. My mother, halfway through early onset dementia, when asked what my name is. Slowly catch a monkey. My favorite aunt says this to me when I get too excited and go off on tangents about my ideas. When I think about it, it reminds me that things don't happen overnight and gives me a strange sense of comfort. It was something my high school soccer coach said to me. A little backstory, we would play a game on a smaller field with 2 teams, and a neutral team on the sideline. One of the teams could pass a ball to the neutral team and the neutral player would pass it back to someone on that team. Well, I was on the neutral team, and a ball fell to me but I couldn't tell which team touched it last. Both teams protested it was their ball. I looked around for a second then kicked the ball straight up. A 50-50 ball. My coach said I'm a turkey is going to be a good father someday. My coach was a father of 3 and someone I respected greatly, so those words meant a lot to me. From my favorite cousin, about my brutal honesty. You can be honest without being brutal. That's when I began to develop empathy. My dad escaped Yugoslavia as the entire system was collapsing. War, poverty, and inflation. Oh, the inflation. Yugoslav money meant nothing anymore, and he was forced to buy US dollars from the Albanian mafia. He did this several times, building up his savings for a plane ticket to America. One day, the police came down the main alleyway, and everybody ran the other way except for my father, who ducked into a nearby shop. At the other end of the street, more police were waiting, and they arrested everybody who ran that way. To this day, my dad credits his escape as having gone to the side, not against the crowd, nor with it. This story, translated roughly from Serbian, means a lot to me. I've extended it to many parts of my life. I always do my own thing, careful to not get caught up in mob mentality or go against one either. It's an excellent life philosophy, an individualistic way of looking at it but extremely helpful for being successful. And, if I ever get caught up in a police raid, I'll know what to do. That's incredible. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.